We can use Bootstrap to style form elements. There are three types of form layouts: vertical, horizontal, and inline forms. This sample login form shows an example of a basic vertical form layout with 3 inputs and 1 button. To create this, we start with a form tag. Remember to always use the role attribute and set it to form. This helps improve accessibility for people using screen readers. Next, we need to wrap all our form labels and form controls in a div with a class set to form group. This is used to help browsers interpret optimal spacing. Inside our div, we have a label with a for attribute set to email. After our label, we have our input. By setting input type to email, the input will be validated for proper email format prior to submission. And we can test that here. You can see that when we put an incorrect format and click the submit button, an error appears. Next, it's required to add a class attribute and set it to form control. Set an ID if you intend to add additional validation or any JavaScript functions to this form input. The placeholder is optional. It simply sets the default input field text. So here you can see it says enter email, and that's what the placeholder is set to as well. Next, we have our div element set up for the second input, which is password. Most of the code is the same as the previous input. Do note that the type has changed to password, and the ID has also changed to PWD. To create a checkbox, start with a div element and set the class to checkbox. Next, create a label element. We've inserted the input with type equal to checkbox right before the actual label, which is remember me. As you can see in our browser here. It's important to note that if you do not include labels for every input, screen readers will have difficulty interpreting your forms. So that's always a good practice. And after all of our inputs, we have our button, and we've been over buttons a few times, so this should be familiar. And lastly, just close the form, the open form tag with the close form tag. We can convert this form into an inline form by adding the form inline class to the form element. So if we set the class to form inline, and save the file and refresh, you can see that all the items are now in a single row.